Welcome to Small Steps. My name is Seth Potts, and I'm going to show you how to use nested if functions. So in a previous video, we talked about if function. Just a quick recap, that is when you give a logical test and have it return whether the value is true or false. You get to pick what that return is for, if it's true or if it's false. Um, Now nested if function is going through that same process here, except for when you get to the portion of what the value is going to be. If it's false, we essentially put another if function in, which moves it to another condition to check for. So as opposed to having just the two choices of if this logical test is true or false, it pretty much moves in an order. Say, check this condition. If it's true, have this result. If not, move on to the next condition. And if that condition is true, here's the return we want, and so on and so forth. So I think it'll allow you to do up to 64 nested ifs in there. But the more you do, the longer the formula is going to be for one, but to the likelihood of something getting messed up or not calculating right is there. So you can do it up to 64, but for the most part, I don't know that I've ever seen anybody use that many in a row. So it is a little daunting to look at, especially if it's not one you typed up. It's kind of hard to figure out. You have to look very closely at it. Even if you're used to it, it's just a lot of functions and text and parentheses thrown in there. So what I've done here is I've kind of color coded each step as we go through. Instead of typing this in up here, I'm going to copy and paste it and walk through it. But the example I'm using here and how I have used it recently would be in a sheet that has z-scores. So I've only taken a portion out of this. So there's another video on calculating a z-score as well, where it's got values for or accounts for prior weeks, and then the mean of those prior weeks and the standard deviation and that whole process to get that z-score. But in the end, with most products, when you're looking at numbers, especially something like these up here that are a little longer, your end user might not know exactly what those mean. So we can spell it out. So instead of having these numbers, what we're going to do is we're going to do a nested if statement to show if it's under a certain number, we want it to, instead of this negative 2.1165 and so on, we want it to just say very low and kind of go up a scale of very low to moderately low to normal range to moderately high to very high. Those are the kinds of results you'd typically want and are easier when you pass on for someone to understand what they're looking at. So like I said, I'm going to go ahead and down here, I'm just going to copy and paste this formula up here. And you see it's already giving me a result here, but we're going to walk through this down here. So we start off just like we did before with the if statement. So if, and the first condition we're looking for is if this cell, this B2 cell, is less than or equal to negative 2. So anything negative 2 and below, we want it to show very low. Now, where we would normally say the false portion, what we want to look like if it's false, we're going to just put another if function in. And so essentially what that's doing is saying if this first condition was not met, we're going to move on to a second condition. Now we do this in order, so obviously looking at this, anything less than or equal to negative 1, you say yes, negative 2 and below is also included, anything below that, but the way this works, they kind of stack on each other, and it's saying we're already assuming this one back here was not met, so it is not below negative 2. So this is kind of like saying anything between negative 1 and negative 2. So when we go in order like this, you kind of see. So negative 2 and below, we want to say very low. If that is less than or equal to negative 1, we want to say moderately low. And then just like before, we're going to add another if function in, and If B2 is less than 1, so this is essentially saying everything between 1 and -1 is going to be in, we're going to call the normal range. Another if function, and if it's less than 2 is going to be moderately high. And then here at the end, just kind of like with the original if function, this is the final part of it. You don't have to put another condition in. It's pretty much if all the other conditions were not met, if false. So this very high is what we're going to have is the last. So that's going to be everything that is not under 2. So by default, that's everything 2 and over is going to be very high. So like I said, it's looks long, but kind of color coded. You kind of see it broken out statement by statement here, every argument of it. So we had copied and pasted it up here, and just to see I have a range of those scores here. So that -2.1 was very low. The -1.1 is going to come back as moderately low. The -0.44 is in that normal range. 1.4 is moderately high, and the 2.5 is very high. So, like I say, kind of like the original, or just the plain old if function. The nested if allows you to get these multiple results. So, and you can go pretty far with it, 64 additional conditions if you would like. But whatever your situation is, however many different results you want based on those conditions, you can pull that up here and have a custom list of these cells, these returns for whatever you're looking for there. If you found this tutorial helpful and would like to see more, click like and subscribe. The next video coming up is going to be building a temporal heat map with a pivot table.